Now I'm going to go into the software to give you an overview of the PM modules. So I'm going to go ahead and go into work ticket entry. And one of the things right away is that it's in the business framework. So you can go ahead and make it full screen or partial screen. If we add a work ticket number, you can see that the work ticket number has gone from 7 characters up to 12 characters, if you're familiar with work order at all. We can do it as an open status, an estimate status, or a release status. I'm going to grab the item from my inventory list, and you can choose what warehouses, put in the quantity, and then it will automatically calculate the yield based on your quantity. And this is all set up in the bill of materials module. You can auto issue labor, you can backflush labor, you can have it default for those transactions to specific things, but then change those what you want it to be this time through. You can make this work ticket for inventory, for a sales order, or for another work ticket. And this will be for reference, just like it is currently. We're going to go ahead and copy from my bill of materials, which is the default, but you can also copy from a template, which is a routing. But within production management, the template can also have materials in that routing if you choose to put them in. You can also copy it from an open work ticket or a closed work ticket. Bill of materials is obviously completely supported, and option bills are supported, so I can add my option. If you have phantom bills, those would be supported as well. We also have the option here to explode the subassemblies if we choose to. And I'm going to, by default, that's on based on the way I have it set up, and I'm going to continue with that. And when I accept it, it's pulled the information into my work ticket. So if I go ahead and go to the steps, it's going to show me all the different steps that are needed for this work ticket. If you look at the step number, you have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then it starts out 10, 20, 30. That is because the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is a subassembly that is on my step 0. You can also see that we have an activity code, which is similar to the work order operation code. We've got our work center, our status code. We've got a status for each and every step. This is a user-defined field, so you can make the status codes be whatever you need them to be. If we scroll out here a little bit, you're going to be able to see that we've also got a change order checkbox if this step becomes a change order or it's a rework step. You've got your budgeted hours, your revised budget, which now, since it's brand new, they're going to be the same. We've got our original labor dollars, our revised budget dollars, as well as our material budgets. And the material budgets haven't been filled in yet, so if I highlight any of them, I can go into this button and recalculate the budgets for this step or all steps, and it will grab the information from that bill of materials and it will fill in what our budgets are. You can make changes to these work tickets and associated steps from this point till the work ticket is closed. If we go ahead and go to our materials button, we're going to see all the different materials that are required for this particular work ticket. And you can see which step they're associated with. If we need to change which step they're associated with, we can go ahead and do a lookup and change it to a different step. On the materials themselves, you can see the quantity required and the oops, I went a little bit too far, and the quantity issued. You can also see a purchase order or a purchase checkbox, and this is going to allow you to check it off to have it be purchased directly to the job for this particular for that particular material. So once the PO receipt process is done, it's automatically issued into WIP for this particular job. You can also add special and miscellaneous items to work tickets. If we go ahead and go to the total section, you can see what your budgeted costs are and what your projected costs are and any projected variances at this point, which it's just being released, so we don't have any. But you can do it for one step or for the complete job. I'm going to go ahead and accept this, and it's automatically going to print out my work ticket and release it based on the way I have the system set up. So if I go ahead and preview this, it's going to bring up my work ticket traveler. And the way I've got my traveler set up, and again, this is a crystal form, so you can make it look and feel how you want it to look and feel, but I've got my material set up, and then I've got my steps. So now, if we go back into our work ticket, you can now see that it's released. And this is a security event, so you can control who it is that has the rights to do that. If we go ahead and go to the Steps tab, you can see our original budgets are locked down, but our revised budgets aren't. So if we needed to, we could go ahead and change our revised budgets for what we think it's going to take this time through. I'm going to go ahead and close this out, and we can go ahead and make some transactions into our work ticket. And it's fully batch compliant, so we can grab our batch or create our batch, and then we can do our different transactions. I'll grab a transaction, and you can do a completion, a closing, or labor or materials. So we're going to go ahead and do materials and grab our work ticket. All right, so went back into work ticket transaction entry. I'm now in a material transaction, so I can go ahead and grab whatever material it is that I'm that I want to. Actually, you can either look up any materials that you need, or you can go into the binoculars and see what was planned. So if I go ahead and grab one of the items, you can see that there's 19 required. We can go ahead and issue 19. We can go ahead and issue 16. We can issue whatever quantity that we need to based on what was physically used. So if I had to use 21 of them because I had some bad ones, I can go ahead and do that. I can also issue items that weren't on the work ticket. So we can go ahead and grab that, tell it what step we needed it for. And in this particular case, you can see that the required and issued are blanked out. That's because it's a lot tracked item, so we have to tell it what lot we pulled it from and how many of them we used. Once we have those in there, we can go ahead and accept it, and then we can go ahead and create another transaction and do a labor transaction. So let's go ahead and grab our batch again, and we can just go ahead and print it. I'm just going to do the one this time, and it's, when I preview it, it's going to take me over to the journal entries as well as the all the transactions, and you can see the labor that was done as well as the materials that were issued. And if there's overhead or burden, you can see what's the actual labor and what is the burden or overhead or both, as well as the materials. And we'll go ahead and update the journal. And we'll say no to printing this out. If we go back to our work ticket, and we'll go take a look at the inquiry, you can go into the materials, the labor, the direct costs, the purchase orders, and the completions. And we did a material transaction, so you'll be able to see what those material transactions are. You can look at it by individual step or for the whole work ticket. And if we go ahead and go over to our materials for a minute and go to add our description in there, we can go to our step 10, or I'm sorry, go to that screw or the memory, and we can see the lot serial distribution from it. and we can see the dynamic inventory transactions. So it's immediately going to take it out of stock and it's going to put it into WIP for our job with the dynamic inventory. So it's no longer a process that necessarily has to be done as a batch thing. It can be done on demand as well. If we needed to, we could go ahead and add additional quantities of stuff as we need it through the work ticket, and we'll do that in just a little bit. But you can also do dynamic labor and dynamic inventory. So if we do like our decab that we added, 2 were required, we don't have any issued. We can go ahead and add those right now, and it will take those out of stock and put them into WIP for the actual work ticket. And again, we can go in and see the transactions once we save it, because it's honoring the cancel. So it's allowing you to get out of this if you need to. So it will do those transactions as we go ahead and accept it. So if we go ahead and go back into it and go to our materials and go to the decab, we'll now have those transactions as far as what happened, when, who did it, and the reference numbers of what's going on. We can do the same thing on the labor side. And these are all real time, so you can do the labor transactions and the material transactions, again, as they happen. But we'll go ahead and go into labor entry, and this will be the dynamic labor entry. You can do the batch and go ahead and accept that. And then you can choose what kind of labor entry you're doing. If you're doing a labor entry, miscellaneous time entry, a labor crew, or a labor cost. You can choose who the employee is, and it will be associated with that particular employee. This is the employee that did the labor. You can grab the work ticket for what work ticket they're working on. You can grab what step they're working on. And we're going to work on our step 10. And it says, hey, you've already exceeded your budgeted hours. Do you want to continue? Because we had a budget on that step, and now we're putting in more time than what that budget allows. I'm going to go ahead and say yes, and it pulls the information in about the step that I'm working on. If you have rights to do so, you can go ahead and change the start time on this and go out and work on it, come back and add an end time, or you can do a total time. So I'm going to say I worked until 12:30, and it will automatically say that I worked the 2.5 hours. This information can also integrate with Sage's payroll if you choose to do so. You can also, if you need to, capture work performed, and you can type in the notes. You can also change your status code. So if I completed this, I could say, hey, this is completed, and I completed 2 of them. And when you accept it, then that information is going to go over to your work ticket again. And the completion isn't a completion entry, it's just recording that you've completed that particular step of the job and you're moving on to the next one. So if we go ahead and go back into our work ticket entry, go into our work ticket, go to the inquiry tab, go to the labor, we can now see that Alan worked on it for 2.5 hours and what the cost is for his 2.5 hours. If we wanted to, we could go to the status change too, and again, we can filter it or not. So if we go to our step 10, we're going to be able to see that the new status code for that particular step is completed. And this can all be used in Business Insights Explorer to create views so that you can tell what the status is on your jobs. If we go to the Totals tab, we're immediately going to be able to see what we budgeted versus what our current costs are versus what our projected ones are based on our current ones and any projected variances that we're expecting. If we go to the Materials tab, if we, at this point, we still need to add something new, we can go ahead and still add it, because you can add stuff to your job from the beginning to the end. So we can say for our step 10, we needed 10 of these. And that's now a new requirement on our job. And if we need to purchase it, we can click off the PO box and you can see that the purchase order field is blank. We can go ahead and cut our purchase order from directly within the work ticket. And again, it has the ability to cancel. So it's saying, hey, you can't do this until we save it. So you have to save it first. But then it will allow you to go out and create your purchase order. I'm going to grab the next purchase order number and whoever my vendor is for it. And when I click OK, that purchase order 95088 has now been created. If I need to, I can go ahead and drill into that purchase order directly from within the screen. And if I need to, I can go ahead and add additional items. This happens to be a PO inquiry, but we'll go ahead and go back into purchase order and add additional items into this PO that we link back to our job. So if I close that out, I go into purchase order entry, we can grab our purchase order, and if we go to the lines, we can go ahead and add additional items to our purchase order. So if I want to just grab an item out of my inventory list, and I'm going to order 20 of these, we can grab our work ticket number. And we can add the link back to the work ticket for what this that this needs to be on that work ticket, and then it will become an item that is on the work ticket that we are purchasing. Give me 1 second. There's a purchase order, or there's a work ticket step number that I missed when I scrolled through this previously. That's because I didn't go down far enough. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and add this to our step 10, and I'll accept that. And now that is linked to our work ticket itself. So if we go back to our work ticket again and go to our materials, we're now going to have that motherboard that's been added to our work ticket. And if I click on it, you're going to be able to see the purchase order field as well. All right, one of the other things that you can do within the work tickets now, and this is a new feature with PM that wasn't in work order, but you can do an AP invoice. So if you received a freight bill that you wanted to put on the work ticket that it's an associated cost with that particular work ticket, you can go ahead and add that. So you can go ahead and grab your vendor, whoever that is, whatever the invoice is, you can put the amount in, and then when you go to the lines, you can grab your freight GL account, and that the whole amount is going to be, I can't type, sorry about that, is going to be put to the freight, and you can see the freight charges there. But what it's going to do when I go ahead and link it to a work ticket, it's going to change that to WIP direct instead of the freight, and then it will go back to the freight when it is taken out of WIP. So I can go ahead and add that to a specific work ticket and go ahead and accept it, and we can print that one out and do the register updates and all that kind of stuff as well. So I'll quick run through those, and then we can go back to the work ticket and see that transaction. All right, so we'll preview this, and then we'll go back over to the work ticket. All right, so if I go into work ticket entry, go to our work ticket again, go to our inquiries. If we go to the direct costs, we'll now see that we've got that freight cost on our work ticket. If we go to the purchase orders one, we'll see all our linked purchase orders and whether or not they've been received or whether or not they've just been ordered. And again, you can filter all these by your whole work ticket or the individual steps. All right, so we'll do one more work ticket transaction entry. And at this point, we can do a work ticket transaction for our completion or closing. And now, when you do a completion, you can do a partial completion or a final completion. And if you do a partial completion, you can return the items to inventory at a standard cost and then use your actual costs when you do a final completion. But I'm going to grab our work ticket again. And you can choose what costing method you want to use, actual, budget, standard, or lower of budget and actual. And I'm going to use actual for our 2 units. So we'll grab our batch and go ahead and print it. All right, do that one more time. And you can see what our costs were and what the total costs were based on what was in that work ticket. You can print out your labels, but I'm going to skip that. You can update your transaction journal, and I'll go ahead and say yes. You can print out your reports just like you did with work order, or depending on how you have it set up, you can pick and choose which ones you want to print out. You can print your missing cost report and your variances from standard. I'm going to skip those at this point, but I will print out my daily transaction journal. So now we have our WIP as well as our inventory GL or debits and credits, and we can update that transaction register. And again, all those reports are done in Crystal, so you guys can modify them and make them look and feel how you want to look and feel. At this point, I'm going to turn it back over to Kelly.
Thanks again, everybody, and you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.